Hello, I'm Nima Rajan. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the Canadian military will keep assisting in nursing homes in Ontario and Quebec, though 36 members of the Canadian Forces have come down with COVID-19 while doing so. That's up from 28 cases of the novel coronavirus among those troops less than a week ago. The military has been deployed to nursing homes in the two provinces to reinforce workers that are overwhelmed by the illness, unable to keep up with residents' needs because of all the protective measures they need to take, or off work because they're ill themselves. The Prime Minister says the premiers of Ontario and Quebec have both asked for the military to extend the deployment, and he expects to agree. Demand for personal protective equipment is expected to go up now that provinces are easing up on the restrictions imposed to curb the spread of COVID-19. Ottawa has made an effort to secure as much of the life-saving materials it can, but official numbers show that those efforts are coming up short. For example, only 203 of the more than 29,000 ventilators have been received. And of the upwards of 104 million N95 masks ordered, less than 12 million have arrived, and 9.8 million of those didn't meet Canadian standards. Today, the federal government is expected to outline what it has done and what it is continuing to do to fill the need for PPE. According to a new poll by Leger, half of Canadians believe they're not getting the whole truth from their governments about COVID-19. The pollsters asked 1,510 adult Canadians selected from an online panel between May 22nd and May 25th about specific theories that have circulated online about the virus. Few believe that Bill Gates is responsible for the spread of the novel coronavirus, that there's a link between the pandemic and 5G networks, or that COVID-19 never existed in the first place. But 37% of people believe that the virus was created in a lab, and 34% think it was created by the Chinese government. A senior scientist with the Center for Addiction and Mental Health is sounding the alarm bell over the potential harm facing people between 18 and 39 who turn to binge drinking during these anxious days of COVID-19. Dr. Haley Hamilton says it's likely that younger respondents had pre-existing issues involving alcohol, but the newer dependencies could have a lingering effect even after the pandemic dies down. A recent survey conducted by CAMH found that nearly 28% of those who worried about the financial impact of COVID-19 were more likely to report binge drinking. Now, when you think of lottery organizations such as the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation, you may think revenue generator. But the COVID-19 pandemic has put the corporation into such a position that it too is getting help from the government. The OLG is set to get a loan from the province to cover operational costs and meet its contractual obligations over the short term as its operations remain closed. City Council in Calgary has voted to prohibit conversion therapy. A bylaw passed yesterday bans businesses that claim that they can change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity, and it includes a $10,000 fine for violators. The city says the bylaw will operate on a complaint basis and that every call will be investigated. Saskatchewan's Justice Minister says the province is prepared to challenge Ottawa in court on its ban on a wide range of military-grade firearms. Don Morgan stated that people in the ministry have been urged to look carefully at any flaws in the legislation or any issues that they can raise. When the Liberal government announced the ban on May 1st, it said that the guns were designed for the battlefield and not hunting or sports shooting. However, Mr. Morgan says Saskatchewan has an outfitting industry that draws people from around the world to do sports shooting, and that he's concerned that the ban will have a negative impact. The World Health Organization is warning of a possible second peak wave of COVID-19 cases in countries that are beginning to ease lockdowns. One WHO epidemiologist says even countries that have seen a decline in cases must prepare for a resurgence. The UN Health Agency is advising continued use of face masks and social distancing because getting back to normal too quickly could speed up the second wave. South Korean rights groups have criticized government plans to require some businesses to register their customers with smartphone QR codes as part of new antivirus measures. They say the country's technology-driven approach to COVID-19 has reached a point where an increase in state surveillance powers is a legitimate concern. South Korea's health ministry has said beginning in June, high-risk businesses will be required to use QR codes to register their customers so that they could be found more easily when transmissions occur. In a joint statement on Tuesday, groups including privacy watchdog JinboNet said such a move would be excessive. Meanwhile, Hong Kong's leader says national security legislation proposed by China will not threaten the semi-autonomous territory's civil rights. Chief Executive Carrie Lam made the claim in front of reporters earlier today, despite widespread criticism of the move as an encroachment on freedom of speech and assembly. She added that there was, quote, no need for us to worry. China's move to pass the legislation signals the central government's determination to take greater control after months of pro-democracy protests last year. The Afghan government says it will free 900 prisoners, which is its single largest prisoner release since the U.S. and the Taliban signed a peace deal. The announcement comes as a 3-day ceasefire with the insurgents draws to an end. The Taliban had called for the truce during the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr that marks the end of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. There are expectations that the prisoner release could lead to new reductions in violence, and Taliban officials say they are considering an extension of the ceasefire. Bethlehem's Church of the Nativity has reopened to visitors after a nearly 3-month closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The church is built over the spot where Christians believe Jesus was born and was closed on March 5th as the first cases of the virus were reported in the West Bank. One of Christianity's most sacred shrines, the church's closure came ahead of the busiest Easter holiday season that typically draws tens of thousands of visitors and worshippers. Well, that'll do it for today's news update. I'm Nima Rajan. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.